Okay, before we can fit the braces, we're going to be sanding down our tops. Now, at the moment they're around about 3mm, I'd say. First of all, we have to sand down this piece of inlay. It has to be level with the rest of the soundboard. Once we've sanded this down, we can then thickness the whole piece. Now, there are several ways of doing this. You can, if you haven't got any equipment, just use a sanding block, a large sanding block, and take your time. And you can just do that just with a sanding block, but it will take, you need to sand down about 1mm, which is, a good couple of hours work probably if you're doing it by hand. Alternatively, you can use a hand plane and plane it down very carefully, and then fine sand towards the end. Or if you have some sort of way to thickness it, I use a thickness sander, which I'm just going to show you now. Okay, so this is the item I'm going to be using. It's called a thicknesser, and this one's made by Pete Howlett in Wales. But the original one of this was called a Gilbert sanding disc, I think, and it was slightly larger. This is only a 3-inch one. For the instrument that we're using, this will be fine. I think it's 60 grit, I think, on the bottom here, and I'm going to put this in my bench drill and set the bench drill to sand this top down. I show an A bracing. Now, the A bracing, I'll use this piece of wood. The A bracing, okay, this is our braces. They're just simple pine bracing or spruce. The A bracing on the soundboard looks like this. Okay. Now that's sufficient to support its. Unlike a guitar, we're not curving the top. It's just a flat top. This fan bracing will keep it quite straight and flat. If it's a very thin, if it's very wide grain spruce, you might consider putting an extra brace here. On my early ones, I certainly always put a brace here, but I find it's not really necessary. I've done some experiments. I've done some with just a single brace going across to stiffen the top up. But I tend to use this one. I find that's very, very effective. It's similar to what's used in a classical guitar. It stiffens the top very nicely. On the back of the instrument, we tend to only use one brace because it's such a narrow instrument. It's supported quite well up here. So on the back of the instrument, we would only use one single brace, either at the widest point at the bottom, or recently I've been angling it so that it has like a half of an X brace just going across there. On the back, I sometimes put a bit of curve by sanding away at the top here, just a tiny bit, just like 1mm or 2, and so. But it's not really necessary. On the first instrument, I wouldn't really think about it. Most stick dulcimers are flat topped, flat bottomed. Unless you're a guitar maker and you have all the necessary dome dishes to curve it, I wouldn't bother. The sound isn't really any different at this stage. Now, to make the struts on our instrument, we need to use pine or spruce. You can just use materials from a hardware shop, but you need to pay close attention to the grain. As you can see on this piece, if you look carefully, the grain is going at an angle almost like 45 degrees, like this way. This piece is only just about acceptable. The ideal you're really looking for is for the grain to be upright, so that you make the brace stiffer. But because of the instrument that we're making, it's not so vital. If you were doing a guitar, you have to pay more attention to these sort of things, because really matters. I've got the one cut out over here. Yeah, so the grain you need. Where's it gone? Ideally the grain would need to be upright on the end, so that when you cut your brace out, you have that strength. It makes the brace more stiff. What you don't want is the grain to be flat like this. This was used on Renaissance lutes and enables the top to be more flexible, but on a tiny little instrument like this we are really trying to stiffen up the top with the braces. Therefore we want the brace to sit on the soundboard in this position. But because of the smallness of the instrument, I think this is just about acceptable, this sort of grain. 45, I wouldn't go any more than that. If it starts to tip over more, then that's not going to be any use really. So that's just slightly off centre. I could plane it. I could plane it if I wanted to, like this, and take out that brace. But for this instrument I'm just going to saw it down on the bandsaw and work from there. Okay, so we have two lots of timber here that we can use. And again, this we can cut this in half. Just by keeping my hands well back in the bandsaw. Okay, so this will be fine. We're looking around about 4mm thick for our soundboard braces, and probably less than about 10mm high at the most, depending on the flexibility of the top. What we're going to do is use the plain side, which is already smooth, as our datum. That's going to be the surface that is glued to the soundboard. This is the rough top is going to be the top of the brace. So we can either sand down these braces, cut them to size and sand them down, or we can plane them, put them in a small jig and plane them. Okay, remembering now that the flat surface, the original plain surface of the wood, is going to be the surface that's glued to the soundboard, we're now going to shape the braces in with the sanding disc very simply. Okay, we're going to taper this to an end. And then we're going to taper the other end. Okay, and to finish off we're just going to do the ends. Okay, what you can see here is slightly wider at this end and narrow at this end. And what we're going to do now is use sandpaper to round over this edge. Okay, I'm using quite a thick rough sandpaper with a sanding block, and we're just going to sand away that edge. Working our way along. On the other side.